Welcome to episode 109 of Broad Street Hustle. Your host, Tommy Nanny. Did a little rearranging in the basement, so I'm in a different-ish location and a little lighting issue, so this is the best we got for those watching on the YouTube channel. Tonight's show, we're going to cover the first third of the MLB season. We'll talk Phillies. We'll go around the league, look back at some of our bets that we talked about in our preview show, our draft, and maybe give you some new ones. Kind of talk about some of the teams. Next week is Belmont week, so we will be broadcasting probably Wednesday. So we'll cover the Belmont Stakes, probably a quick NBA preview championship in there. And then the following week is U.S. Open for a little housekeeping. Let's go around the room here. We got Jason Sayeda.
Hey, Tom.
Jason, how are you? We got Jimmy the Chalk.
Hopefully we can get a few more quality sponsors so you can afford to have all the lights on in the basement from this point on.
Well, the issue was the light was a little too bright.
Okay. There you go.
And Christopher Michael Meeker, who's still on the mend. How we doing?
Doing good. Legs doing good. I tested it today on the elliptical. So no real bad pain, just a little cramping. But when's the last time we did a podcast where it's still light outside? Still, I'm like looking at the window and it's still sunny out here.
Probably last September.
That would be last week, probably.
No, that was a little dark around this time. But anyway.
I think that's the medication you were on.
I'm in a basement where I don't have access to a window. Never been like. All right, let's jump right into it. We'll talk Phillies. So, anybody watching, obviously, they lost 4 or 5 recently. Now they did win yesterday, so technically they lost 4 or 6 at this point. Yes, they kind of righted the ship a little bit yesterday. Got some home runs from Schwartz and Castellanos. Sanchez, who's still pitching, his ERA's 2.58 or something like that. It's just crazy. But they did have a recent slide. You kind of saw what we've seen in the past where the bats go quiet. They're not hitting their home runs and they're not producing runs. They're not getting guys home. A couple guys cooled off and blown. So you know what's going on. So Jason, what's your thoughts? Any concerns with the recent slide? Obviously, they're not going to win at a 100-team win clip all season, but you also don't want to see them lose 4 or 5 to the Giants and Rockies. But it's a long season, so
it's a tough road trip. 2-4 against teams that you probably should have been at least 4-2 against. The one game where Harper got thrown out in the first inning, that's a game they probably would win if he's still in the game. So
that wasn't the other game too. What game were they up? They had 2 outs in 9. The first game 1.
Was it game 1? Oh yeah, and Alvarado. Well, I think that was the game Harper got thrown out.
I was gonna say, is that same game? Yeah. So even without Harper, they're up 2. They got 2 outs.
Yeah, they should have won that game, but hey, you should have won. They didn't win. I think it's a little bit of a reality check because now, I'm sure that they know what warts that they have as a team, right? I still think I think they made a mistake with taking Turnbull out of the rotation and putting Walker in. I don't know how much longer they're going to give Walker to prove that he should remain in the rotation, but there's a problem with one of the starters right now. Now that Turnbull hasn't pitched well in the bullpen,
so here's the only thing I'll say with that. You play 162 games, right? We know Walker's not pitching in the playoff.
Yeah.
But Walker pitches 6 innings almost every time he goes out.
He does.
And even though he gives up 4 or 5 runs, he's giving you 6 innings. You don't know. Turnbull, we've talked about his innings in the past. You just don't know what Turnbull is going to give you. And in a long season, we're talking about your 5th starter at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want a guy that's going to win innings.
I think Walker's not even been as good. Like last year, I would have said, yeah, he's giving you 6 innings. He's giving up 3 runs. He's not been doing that this year. Like he might be pitching 5 or 6 innings, but he's getting smoked. Like a lot of those balls in that game last week were
but a couple of his, he was 1 inning away from having a good start where Topper left him in and he gave up the 2-3 runs, and now his stat line is way skewed. Where if he would have read the situation right,
Yeah, but what if he keeps him
I
in and,
just
and he
think
gets hit? I mean, you don't
Right.
know if he's not going
but
to.
it was the one inning was in the 7th is when he got hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's
I'm
early
just
in
not a
the
fan. I'm not a fan of his. I think he's a problem. I think at some point I hope Turnbull's back in the rotation, and I don't know what's going to happen with Walker. I don't think you could trade him. I don't know, but I think there's other issues. I think the outfield. I know you had mentioned that pre-show, and that's one of the things I'm going to harp on is when you look at that outfield. Let's face it, Marsh is a platoon player. I know everybody is, saying, "Oh, I got to play him against lefties, play him against." Well, he's 5 for 35 against lefties this year. Like he's proven he can't hit lefty. Maybe one day he could, but he can't. So he's a platoon player. We know Rojas can't hit, and Castellanos up until last night was hitting 190 something. So that's not a World Series winning outfield.
Your Castellanos a 604 OPS. Marsh is 753, but a lot of that came early in the season too.
Exactly, and against right-handers.
And Rojas is a 510 OPS. I mean,
that's not an outfield
around-
that's going to win a World Series. So they need an outfielder, and I don't know if we want to talk trade yet or if we want to go around the horn first, but
let's get everybody's temperature first, and then
okay,
move in.
Come back to me because I have some recommendations. I think, like you said, Bohm slowed down a little bit. He definitely needed a day off. I mean, he was struggling, become a butcher again in the field, which is a little scary. So, but that being said, they're 39 and 18. So, I mean, you can't complain too much. But they need something. The deadline.
Yeah, and they've been playing well without Turner as well, too. So,
yeah,
we're getting back, an all-star level player.
Yeah.
Shortly, hopefully, at some point. I mean, I know Sosa's filled in really nice, but still, I mean, Sosa, Turner. Chalky, what do you think so far?
Yeah, so as far as the Turnbull Walker thing, I mean, you guys kind of touched on it, but I mean, the main thing was Turnbull just hasn't thrown a lot of innings in any kind of recent years. So I see giving him a little bit of a break. And the other thing is too, look, Walker's on the team. Walker is not a guy, if he's going to be on your roster, that you're going to put him on the bench and bring him out of the bullpen in certain situations. Like, that's just not going to work. So if you're not going to give him the full Adam Eaton treatment at the start of the season, you got to put him in rotation and let him eat up some innings and then go from there. Now, I don't think you can't keep him in the whole season if he's going to be bad. I don't know when the perfect time to pull him back is, but I'd say give him a couple more starts, and if he's still struggling, then maybe you go back to Turnbull, or I don't know if they want to call anybody up from the minors to get a couple spot starts. But Walker is useless on this team if he's not starting. So you either got to send him down or just cut him or whatever, because I don't think nobody wants to trade.
What happened to thought, and I think it was with Sanchez, but like these guys almost like that, the opener, like the Walker will go 3 or 4, and the Turnbull comes in to go 3 or 4. Turnbull's been a 1-inning pitcher, in certain situations. Now Walker got hit the other day in the first inning, I think. But if you 3-4 good innings out of Walker and take him out and then go to Turnbull, isn't that even an option?
I mean, you could, if that was your plan every 5 days, then you're basically limiting a pitcher coming out of the bullpen. So using 6 starters, but they're not, if Turnbull's going to give you 3 or 4 innings every 5th start, then you got to be careful about using them in the bullpen for anything else.
They haven't even brought Turnbull in high leverage situations.
I mean, that might be fine. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he hasn't looked good, but they're not bringing him in to close or for a hold in the 8th inning either. So, I mean, they might be looking at him for the most part as somebody that comes in early if the starter doesn't have it going that night. And so in essence, he's the second guy coming in behind an opener, in that theory. But I mean, the recent slump does not bother me in the sense that I think they were playing above their capability a little bit. So you're going to expect a little regression. And look, it was, Colorado is, I don't think they're the worst. I don't know if they're still the worst team in the National League, but they've been playing better since the first time the Phillies played them. And San Francisco's a borderline playoff team right now, which may not be saying much for the National League, but they lost the 1 game in extra innings where they didn't score, and they gave up the lead in the first game, and then they hit well yesterday. So, I mean, their schedule hasn't been the toughest, but the schedule is what it is. And Atlanta is dropping games to the Pirates, and they've dropped 2 or 3 to the Nationals with another game tonight. I don't know what's going on there. So you can only play who you play. And a lot of these teams that the Phillies have played are below 500 because they've lost 4 and 5 games to the Phillies. So the Giants lost 5 of 7. San Diego got swept.
I mean, look, if you look, the Phillies are like 11-3 against teams above 500.
Yeah,
and the Braves are like 5-11 or whatever it is. So it's so the
yeah. I mean, look, the Braves are the toughest team the Phillies played.
500 baseball is not.
Yeah. I mean, the Phillies haven't played Milwaukee. They haven't played the Dodgers. They haven't played the Yankees or any of the tough teams in the AL East. But reality is that this is the part of the schedule where you want to make up, you get a lead or make up ground. So they're setting apart. And, you know, the Acuna injury is obviously going to be bad for Atlanta. I know they won the World Series the year that he got hurt before, but they'll make a move. But, you know, if you're Atlanta, you lost your top pitcher and now you lost your MVP outfielder. So you have to see how they rally. So while the Phillies cool down, it's not easy for Atlanta to make up these games either right now with the injuries.
Meeker?
Yeah, the topic you're talking about with Walker, and you know, every time the guy's in the mound, me and Jason are texting back and forth about how bad this guy is, and actually, I think he's worse than what his stats say.
Well, his velocity is down too. He's a problem. He's a problem.
He's throwing like 89.
Yeah, he's a problem.
It's a problem, and I think the reason why they're holding back Turnbull is because I thought when they signed him, he was more of an insurance policy where you can put him in the pen for long relief outings and then he'll step in for an injured pitcher, which maybe is the reason why they don't really want to use him every 5th day. Of course, you know, you're paying whatever you're paying Taijuan Walker $20+ million a year. So that might be a reason why he's still in the rotation.
17, but
yeah, whatever it is, you know, but it's still way over what he should be getting paid. But that's neither here nor there. I just think that they're holding him back because if an injury occurs, and I don't think they really trust anyone in the minors to come up and take that spot, then Turnbull walks in, and he hasn't pitched a lot of innings in the last 2 years. What, a year and plus removed from Tommy John surgery. So I don't think they're going to, you know, I think that's the plan for him. I mean, I don't think that he's going to be supplanting Taijuan Walker anytime soon. And I get your point, Tommy. Like, he comes in and gives you innings, so he, you know, he's not out of there in the 5th inning. Usually can get you to 6 or 7. And then, you know, you have to use your bullpen after that.
I mean, here, I'm just going to, who's the Dodgers' 5th starter? Who's the Braves' 5th starter? Who's the Padres' 5th starter? Who's the, and then you guys might know the answer. But what my point is, like, you're talking about a 5th starter that's playing in regular season baseball game against probably the 5th or 4th starter of the other team when it lines up that way. I mean, we're not like, you're not using them in playoff baseball. You're not going to use them in the last month of the season when the games matter. You're innings at this point to get to meaningful baseball.
You're right. You're right. I mean, I agree with you there. I mean, it's not a big thing, you know, but you know, when you're 39 and 18, you're trying to look for something to talk about that you can complain about at this point. But I have more complaints like what Jason said about the offense in the outfield. I mean, we have some problems out there right now. I mean, with Castellanos sitting under 200, with a Rojas that can't really hit, with Marsh is, like you said, I mean, is he a platoon player? I give him a little more credit than that. I think he could play every day, but you know, when you're not getting a whole lot of bats against left-handed pitchers because you are platooning him, I mean, then, you know, your stats are going to say that you're not good against left-handed pitchers. I mean, I guess that's the bottom line. But if they were going to make a move, in the beginning of the year, we said that maybe the move would be more like a rotation piece, which I don't think they really need, even with Walker as the 5th starter. I think the move they need to make is to get a high-quality center fielder. If you want to win the World Series and go for it, I think that's the move you make. And there's some names out there, and we can talk about that, but, you know, let's just leave it at that. I think they have some tough games coming up on their schedule, you know, in the next 2 weeks. A couple of them, you know, good teams there that they're going to play. And even though St. Louis is not a good team, they're a hot team right now. So you're going to run into a team that's won 8 out of the last 10 games. So, you know, it's always going to be a test.
Yeah, and another thing, though, and then we'll move to trades. And I meant to say this last week, so it doesn't look like I'm redlining here, but or red boarding. That's a meeker term. Is going to Colorado has always been a crutch, like, and not just for the Phillies. Like you go out there with, you look at the size of the field, the ballpark. You look at the altitude, and that ball. Your eyes get big for the baseball, and if you watch those games, like their bats were not patient. Like they weren't working counts. They were swinging early at counts. They were jumping on pitch. It's almost like they got that over anxious because they're in Colorado. I need my, let them. This is where I can inflate my numbers for these 3 games, and their bats kind of, got hurt because of it, and it carried over to the Giants series, and then now they got they scored had 5 runs or whatever, 6 runs the other night, got the day off today, so let's see, maybe that gets fixed, and it's just a theory. It's not. I'm not saying it is. It could just be they got cold or whatever, but I do think that happens sometimes when you go to Coors Field, and they'll call it Coors. And you just get that over anxious, knowing like that ballpark.
Here's the thing, though. My rebuttal is they're 20-35, so somebody's beating them there, right?
No. I mean, Colorado's not good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, but a good team, a team like that, like a Schwarber, who's like, I haven't hit I think up until that series, right? He didn't hit a home run for 11 games. Like a guy, this is where I could jump on it. Cassiano, this is the one I'll get out of my slump, and like I said, you watch those at bat, they were swinging earlier in the counts than they did. They were not patient at bats as they were. It was like going back to the Diamondback series of the playoffs. Like there's 2 games. That's exactly what it looks like.
13 of their 20 wins are at home, though. They're 13 and 14 at home, so almost 500 without taking into account the competition.
Every time Phillies go on West Coast trips, they have issues, no matter how good they are. They've always had bad West Coast trips, and whether, I don't care what time of the season it is, they always go out to the West Coast and lose to bad teams.
Nah, but didn't they go out west already once this year and did fairly well?
When they played the Pod,
they played San Diego, right?
Yeah, they beat the Padres in Anaheim like 2 or 3, right? Or Angels.
I mean, that was a good trip. I'm saying, there's more than one West Coast trip a year that they go on. I mean, every year I always seem to remember them going out to the West Coast, whether it's the Dodgers or the Padres or the Giants or even the Rockies, and lose games. I told Jason, I texted him before the Colorado series. I said they're due to lose to a bad team and lose 2 or 3, and that's what they did. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, it's just the ebb and flow of the game. It just happens.
I mean, in a league where you lose 62 games and you're probably one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're 39 and 18, and I'll do the quick math of the percentage, and then we could, ration that out to what that comes to.
Yeah, well, actually,
that's over 100 wins.
Before we get to the trades, that was actually a question I had. So, where do you see the Phillies finishing win-wise this year? And it doesn't have to be exact number. Like, who thinks they're over 100? Jason, over 100 wins this year? You think they get there?
I do. I think they're really good. Like I think the divisions stink, right? The Braves obviously took a hit. The rest of the division's not good. So I mean, they're going to be playing the Mets, who are a disaster. The Marlins are bad. The Nationals are mediocre. Now they haven't played a lot of good teams yet, right? So that part of their schedule's still coming. But I just did the quick math. They're still on 110 game pace. So even if they drop to 8 games below that, you're winning 101, 102 games. So I think they could get to 100.
Yeah, Chalky, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just taking a quick look to see if there was an updated over-under.
It's probably under 100, I would think.
I'll say 98, lightly under 100. Their schedule will be a little tougher next couple months. They'll still win enough games, but their pace will slow down a little bit, but I'll say they 98 win team.
I mean, some of that's going to depend on, and it probably will be, is the Braves. Like if the Braves do fall back and you got a 12-game lead, going into, so you're definitely not going to be.
I mean, you got a lot of Braves games. You got like 15 more Braves games, 12 more Braves games the rest of the year. So if they're out of it, or if the Phillies are so far ahead that they're just messing around, that's
Yeah,
all
so-
going to play into it.
FanDuel has 100.5.
Oh,
Yeah, I would go
Right.
under on that, but
how about you, Meeker? What's your thought?
The Phillies have been blessed with one thing this year, and that's the health of their rotation. I mean, aside from Taijuan Walker being hurt, they haven't missed a start. And I really think it comes down to that. If one of the horses goes down for any kind of extended period of time, then I'll go under. But let's assume we can't assume injuries, so I'm not going to assume injuries. So I'm going to go over 100.5.
Yeah, I say 102. That's my prediction.
That's
Yeah, and I think the way Jason backed into a number where, you project what they would get on this pace, and then say how much under are they really going to be of that pace, and like that, it brings you to 102. So, Jason, back to you with the trades now. So, and then I'll go to Meeker because I know he seemed quick, wanted to jump on an outfielder as well. But you say go back to you on a trade, so you
Yeah.
had some thoughts.
So, I mean, we did talk about they still need a closer, in my opinion, right? I still think that's probably number one, if you ask me. So, same guys that we mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever we talked about it. Would love to see them get one of those guys. Your Mason Millers, your Presleys, Bednar, Tanner Scott, or Romano, however you say his name for Toronto. But then outfield-wise, I don't know if they're going to get a center fielder. I think that they could wind up platooning Marsh with. Now, I'd rather it be Pache, but I think they like Rojas. I think they love Rojas. So I think it would be a platoon of Marsh and Rojas in center. And then maybe you get, and I keep mentioning this guy's name, Tommy Pham. They wanted him at the deadline last year. They kept talking about, or there's rumors about them getting him. The guy just hits. He's right-handed. He was huge in the playoffs last year. Like, he had a huge World Series. Wasn't that great against the Phillies, but he had a big series the series before. So he's a proven playoff player. He's going to hit 270. He's going to hit 15 to 20 home runs. He's not a bad defender. I would go out and get him. He's playing for the White Sox right now.
So
they're
this is
out of
the
it.
guy you're saying go get a guy, not a platoon player.
I mean, so he would wind up platooning a little too. So, like, you would platoon Marsh would wind up playing a lot, right? Because Marsh would play some center, then also platoon a little with Pham. So Marsh would probably get the majority of starts out there, him and Pham. And then Rojas kind of, you throw him into the mix at some point. A lot for defensive purposes late in the game and stuff like that. And against lefties, he'll play. Those are the names. And then I brought up another name. I was actually talking to Meeker about this yesterday or the day before. If they do go to center field, they're out Harrison Bader for the Mets, right? Another right-handed hitter. Because another thing that we didn't talk about and that we should is they're one of their only weaknesses. And you could see that teams love throwing lefties against them.
Dude, they play against so many.
Yeah.
It's
So,
crazy.
and the problem is a weakness is because Castellanos is hitting friggin' 190, right?
Yeah, because their right-handed bats are Bohm, Castellanos, and JT.
Right? So
Yeah.
Bohm and JT are fine. Who's the
And
problem?
Bohm's not going to get power, so you're
Right.
eliminating the
Right.
power.
Yeah.
Side now.
So, and Castellanos is not going anywhere. Nobody wants him. Jason
And
Stark
that was
was
going to
on
be
the
my
other
follow-up
day.
question. You don't have a
Nobody wants
scenario
him.
where
So,
Castellanos-
there's no, trade him to the Marlins. Nobody wants him. They tried to trade him in the offseason, and nobody wanted him. So, you got to go the route of a minor trade, and I would like either Pham or Bader.
All right, Meeker, you wanted to mention something with the outfield earlier around trades as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would be fine with Bader because he plays a really good center field if you want to platoon in left field. If that's something that you're thinking about doing with Marsh and Rojas or whatever, with Pache, combination of all these guys. Now, I was not thinking of this name, but before this podcast tonight, I happened to be listening to MLB Network radio on Sirius XM. And the team in their own division that seems to have a plethora of outfielders in the minors that are on their way up is the Nationals. And the Nationals may be looking to make a deal if they're going to be out of the race, which we believe they are. They're kind of not ready to be taking that next step. But Lane Thomas is going to be thrown out there at the trade deadline. And I know he's just coming off an injury, but since he's come off an injury, he's had a few really good games. He had 27 homers, knocked in 80 last year, stole about 25 bases. This is a guy that I don't know would cost a whole lot because he's not a big name, but I think would fit really well in this lineup if you can get him. Now, I think he's a right fielder. It doesn't necessarily mean he can't play left field, if you want to throw him in left field and platoon center. But I think that would be a good name. Me and Jason threw this whole scenario out with Castellanos being traded. I mean, his contract means that he's not really going to get traded to any team that's, that I don't know, that's going to give you prospects because they're not going to want that kind of contract. But if you want to trade a bad contract for another bad contract, the one guy that I would think that they could possibly go after would be George Springer, who has not had a good year, but we know he is a good player. But his numbers, if you look at the contract, is very similar to Castellanos. And if you just want to make a bad contract trade for another one, maybe he just fits better here. But I'm not sure if it's a big improvement given the way he's played this year. I would definitely agree, though, that yes, I want the outfielder, but I still think they're going to shore up the bullpen. I think that's more of a sure thing that they'll do before the deadline. Will it be a Mason Miller? Might cost you too much. So, you got to go down the line of some of the names that Jason was talking about. But I think that's a move that they will make because I'm still unsettled, with what they're doing in the ninth inning right now. It's kind of a mix and match thing, and I just don't.
I mean, if you pay close attention too, Alvarado's velocity is down as well.
I just don't trust.
He's doing like 97.
I don't trust him either.
Bro.
I mean, you could throw Hoffman in the ninth. I mean, he's probably been their best reliever, but he's more in that seventh inning, eighth inning, high leverage, close game guy. That's the guy you want in that situation. You really want someone that comes in there and just blows, hitters away in the ninth, like a lot of these closers that are successful have done. But that's the move I think that they'll make eventually. I don't think it'll come soon. I think it'll come at the deadline, when teams are more desperate and out of the race. But I think that's something that's going to happen at some point in this season for sure.
Yeah, Chalky, anything to add on the trade route?
I mean, I'm in agreement. Like the priority for me would be to get a closer. And I think that makes, that guy that comes in every time he's the closer, that makes the bullpen that much better. Because a couple of the games they end up losing were games, that I won't say the bullpen gave them away, but the bullpen gave up the runs late or whatever. And they have a lot of good, they have some good arms, but like we said, there's no real solid closer that you're going to rely upon game in and game out. And if one of these younger guys is available, I would be willing to pay a high price to get a guy that you're going to have around for a while. Now, if Kimbrel was still the old Kimbrel, but he's 45 years old, I wouldn't give up a ton for him. But, for the kid that's on the Athletics, yeah, if he's going to be your guy if he's got a couple years on his deal and he's going to be your guy for another 5-6 years, I wouldn't hesitate to give up. I mean, look, I'm not watching the minor leagues, but Abel seems to be dropping down everybody's top prospect list. So I don't know if he's losing steam. So maybe now is the best time to sell him if you're going to get any value, if he's going to be in a deal. And if he's got to be part of a package to get a big name top line closer, I think that's more likely than bringing in a big name outfielder like you guys are saying that you're going to have to pay a lot for. Because Castellanos, he's going to be here. And I'll admit baseball, I don't know off the top of my head. Does baseball let you eat money on contracts if you're trading? So, I mean, that might be the best, like if you're going to go after a Springer and Toronto's like, look, we're not good. We're trading some of these guys. And, if Phillies eat most of Castellanos' money and give up a prospect or two and get Springer back, then Toronto's clearing out the bad contract and they're getting the bill for a much smaller portion of another bad contract. So maybe that's more palatable to a team like that. That's probably the only way you're going to get rid of Castellanos and get anything of value coming back. And even then, you might have to eat a lot of contract to get nothing back. But I think the bullpen is the best.
Deal. I think you might say maybe you send cash in a deal, right?
Whatever it is to offset, like that's what you'd have to do to move him. but I don't see that as likely during the season, especially with the way, I mean, his teammates like him, and but you're just not going to get anything good in season, I think. So I think it's closer, and I would, if there's a really great one available, I would not hesitate at paying a big price for it.
Yeah, and no, there's no scenario where like you put a Harper can move back to the outfield. He's locked in at first at this point. I mean, I know Pete Alonso's name has been out there like as a first baseman. Is that somebody you can get, move to first, put Harper back in the outfield?
I would think about, if you could get a first or third baseman, I would think about moving Bohm to first if he continues to struggle a little bit defensively. Now, he might struggle at first base, but if you were willing to put Harper back in the outfield, I mean, right now, you basically have 2 platoon spots. I mean, Rojas isn't playing better than a platoon player should in center, and you have left, and Castellanos certainly isn't, but he's got a $20 million contract, so you're not going to platoon him. So you have 3 outfield spots, that are up for grabs. So if you can put Harper back out there, I don't think they do it, but.
No, I don't think.
I don't think they're going to do that.
As crazy as it sounds, and I don't think this is going to happen. I've just heard, this kind of talk the other day. Maybe you put Trey Turner in center field. He's played center field in his career. I'm not saying he's done it recently, but he did do it. But
what is that gives you what? Sosa in the lineup?
You got to have faith in Sosa
in the lineup.
Come on. I Sosa's been a good player, but
he's very good at what he's doing.
When he feels,
very good at what he's doing.
Unless you're trade for a shortstop or second base.
Yeah.
But he's done this in the past too, where when somebody's injured, he plays real. But then the more it's almost like he knows that role, and then
he got cut from St. Louis, and the guy in front of him wasn't playing all that well. Came here, played well enough through the playoffs, and then last year he's up and down. So that's the way he's going to be.
It's just a matter of whether you'd rather have his bat in the lineup versus a Rojas.
The problem is though, like I like him a lot, but when his bat's in the lineup consistently, and he's not walking, and then he's hot right now. And once he's not, and he's not going to walk because he swings at everything, then nobody's going to be crazy about Edmundo Sosa anymore.
And
I like him. I'm not saying I don't like him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if it was like somebody better be hot that you're leaving out, but not for Sosa.
Well, the appointment's been Merrifield because this is a guy that's basically played as a starting player for his whole career. But I had said from the beginning, like if these guys they're not out there every day, and you just change them to a bench player, they're not going to be the same. And he has certainly not been the same.
Yeah, he's played enough opportunities, though. Right? I mean, he's playing 4 times a week.
Yeah, I think his time's up. I think Clemens is going to stay, and I don't know what they'll do. Like they'll either DFA him or they're going to try to trade him.
Yeah, the one outfield name that you guys didn't mention that I'll throw out there, see what your thoughts are. And this is a guy his name was associated with the Phillies in the offseason, and his team is not really doing well. And he's not doing well this year, but that's, I'm going to butcher his name, Arozarena from Tampa.
He's a monster. I just don't think they're going to make a big name. Like we already said, Castellanos is making $100 million out there. And you got a DH that's making 100 or 80 million, whatever he's making. So I don't think it's going to be a big name. I would love Arozarena, however you say his name. I just don't know if they're going to do something like that. I think it's going to be more of like a fam,
I mean, one of the things you can argue with, like Dombrowski likes to make a splash, but Dombrowski also is a huge locker room guy, where he believes in, that's why they got the Schwarbers. Like, so to move like a Castellanos and all could be not the best move for a guy that is liked in the locker room.
Yeah.
So I think that actually will weigh in some of the decision making. Where you're bringing like a fam that it ain't messing your lot. It ain't doing nothing,
They're not going to trade Castellanos. It's not happening.
Nobody wants him.
They're going to make a trade to get an outfielder, sure. But Castellanos is not going to be part of any trade to get the guy you're talking about.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. And that's probably the biggest reason. because he doesn't want to disrupt the locker room.
I think it
Well,
is.
the other
It's not as bad right now, so I think that's the biggest reason you don't trade
I
him.
mean, Castellanos, he has the potential to get hot. We've seen it in the playoffs last year for
Sure.
time.
Jason Stark was on, though, and he said they dangled his name the whole offseason and got zero interest on him. So they were looking to trade him in the offseason. Nobody wants him.
Yeah, but no one wants the contract.
It's a bad
What is it?
contract for a guy who's hitting 200.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on. That's
All right,
that's
let's,
got 3 years left, 2.5 years left.
is that 2.5? Jesus.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit around the league. And I don't know how you guys want to take this. Jason, do you have some? Did you want to start with like some of the stuff we said probably, I guess, before the season?
Why don't
or-
we start
or-
with our drafts? Like we
and we'll
had the
start from there.
draft, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll run down the teams we have. We all did pretty well with our first pick. It's the picks after. Not great. So I had the first pick. I had the Phillies, right? I think Chalky was second with the Dodgers. Then Meeker picked the Yankees, and Tommy has Baltimore. I think all 4 of those are legit.
Viable championship.
Yeah, I
contenders.
don't think anybody missed on those picks. The rest of my teams, the Mariners, they're not as good as I thought, but they're in first place right now.
They're in
but
first place.
They're
Yeah.
in first. Twins, not great, and then the Blue
They're
Jays
steady.
was terrible. Tommy had the Braves as his second pick, but I don't know about the Braves.
Every draft that we've had I've had major injuries. I had the Jets lost Rodgers
Yeah.
in 3 seconds. The basketball team, it's like Embiid missed half the season.
Yeah. Cardinals, I actually, when we get to that later, I'm starting to like the Cardinals and the Cubs. So they're decent late picks. Chalky's Rangers, I don't know about
They
that.
don't
I
look
don't
like
like them.
a
The
no.
Reds, not great. I do like your Guardians pick.
They're
First
they're-
place. So
yeah, their record nice right
yeah,
now.
they're legit. Meeker's Astros, not great. Padres, not great. And then Diamondbacks, not great, Meeker.
So actually, that brings me, and I'll use that to segue into the next one, where I had like some teams where I was going to throw out there, and your thought, and all 3 of those teams that Meeker has were on my list of like, do these teams, and I'll start right there, and I'll start with you, Meeker. The Astros, the Diamondbacks, and who was the other team? you
Padres.
said?
Padres.
Because I had the
Yeah, I mean-
Padres and Giants like right now neck and neck. Like of those 3 teams you have now, could be all, could be none. Who do you see them making a turnaround? I mean, are they a wild card team? Are they title contender? Are they just gonna fall flat on their face? Because there were 3 teams, obviously
Yeah.
picked them that we had preseason.
Well, when it comes to the Astros and the Diamondbacks, I mean, they were hit with really bad injuries early on in the season. At one point, the Astros had 4 of their 5 starters on the IL. And I think the Diamondbacks had about 3/5 of their starters in the IL.
Can I interrupt you a second? Did you guys see what happened about an hour ago with the Diamondback? One of their
No, I
pitchers walked off the mound injured, Chalky.
Well, I know who was starting the night.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that's not good. If that's a bad injury, I'm sure his name is ZG. Is that his initial?
As would be his initial.
Well, I think. Look, I mean, baseball is like that. I mean, if you lose that many pitchers, especially if you lose
All right,
that many players,
so-
then you're gonna situation you're in.
The
Not making
question,
excuses.
Meeker, wasn't
I
how
think
many
the Astros-
excuses can you make for the team. The
Yeah.
question
Yes.
is, do
Yeah.
those teams
Correct.
make a turnaround and become contenders?
I think the most logical is the Astros. I think the Astros can turn around because they are getting healthy and because they have the pedigree and because, they've just been underperforming. I think, we're only 1/3 of the way through the season. They're only 6.5 games out in a division that I think most of us thought was kind of weak, So even though the World Series champ came from that division,
I didn't
we're not
think it was
big
weak. I
fans.
thought it was the strongest division in baseball.
I don't know. Well, I mean, you got the Angels and the A's in the division.
Yeah, but
pretty,
it's top heavy. I mean,
yeah. Anyway, but none of those teams are lighting the world on fire. Is my point. I think the Astros can get their shit together, their stuff together, and win that division.
well, they're plus
Diamondbacks-
plus 290 to win the division right now.
Which is, yeah, what are they? Probably second in the division in odds.
They're second in odds. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's the team that you could logically say can make a move. I think the Diamondbacks, no, I don't think that's going to happen. And when it comes to the Padres, I mean, they're in the mix with everybody else for a wild card. They can hit. They have some talent, obviously. So I think that they can make it to the playoffs. So I think they're a contender for a World Series. No, but I do think that they can make the playoffs. Those three teams. If you're just talking about those three.
Yeah, and Chalky and Jason, you guys can just touch on it, but don't go into depth because I'll give you guys another scenario. But anything to add with the thoughts on those three particular teams quickly, Jason?
I don't like any of them, to be honest with you. I think the Astros are just having a down year, and I do not think they're going to win a division. I do think Seattle's going to win a division. Diamondbacks, they're just, I mean, they do have excuses. Like, they might be a good bet for next year. And the Padres, they're just not good enough. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that team. Guys, Tatis, Machado, those guys are just, I don't know. I think they're a little overrated, and the pitching staff is not great. No, I don't like any of them.
Chalky?
Yeah, I'm more in line with Jason. I mean, I would pick Houston of those three if I had to, but yeah, Arizona's, gallon through 6 pitches tonight. I see Carroll's having a real sophomore slump with the bat, and other guys are hurt, so they're out of the question. And I don't think San Diego has a high enough ceiling, so Houston would be the one, if they get it right, could do something.
All right, Jason, I'm going to give you this one because you made mention of these teams. So, what's it? The AL Central, Kansas City and Cleveland are right there, first and second. Kansas City was one. Chalky and you, somebody gave them out as a real sleeper, and there were crazy odds to win the division and all that good stuff. So through the first third, we know where they're at, but the second and third, do we see KC staying there? Do we see Cleveland staying there? Do we see it a battle to the end, or does somebody sneak up behind them?
Well, I made 2 bets today. I bet them at plus 235 to win the division, and I bet them at plus 1,000 to win the AL. They're legit. They have, and I'm sure if you go back and listen to old podcasts, me mention Seth Lugo, who I wanted the Phillies to get for 2 years. He has now become the ace of their staff, and he's a Cy Young candidate. And they also have Cole Reagans, who's another guy that I gave out for Cy. I didn't give Lugo out for Cy Young. I wanted Lugo. I like him. Turned into Cy Young candidate. I did give out Cole Reagan in the beginning of the year. So they have 2 legitimate Cy Young candidates in the rotation, and they have a legitimate MVP candidate in Bobby Witt Jr., who has become a top 10 player in the league now already. He's going to be a superstar if he's not already. And then their catcher, Salvador Perez, is also, in my opinion, an MVP candidate. They're legit. They probably need to add something at the deadline, but I totally think they're legitimate.
Now, how about Cleveland? So,
Cleveland, I'm going to give out another candidate for MVP later when we talk about that stuff. They have one. I don't know if they can. I mean, they have the pitching to stay up there, but I still think the Royals will catch them. I think Cleveland can make the playoffs, though, as a wild card.
Yeah, quickly, Chalky, those two.
Despite my selection of Cleveland in the draft, one of the 3 bets I had written down was Kansas City to win the division at plus 265. Cleveland's, none of their numbers are super outstanding, either in pitching and hitting, looking at it. And I think they were actually a team that did have a favorable, they did well against a favorable schedule to start the season. They'll be around there for the playoffs, but I don't think KC, I think there's value in KC at plus 260 something at this point to win the division when they're only 3 games back right now. So, yeah.
And then Meeker, you too, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the Phillies and how they've kind of beat up on teams under 500. They're 25-11 against teams under 500, as Chalky was alluding to. I'm not a big fan of their staff. Obviously, Ramirez is an MVP candidate, but I would, if you're asking me who's going to win that division, if I look at the talent, I actually like KC better than I like Cleveland. Cleveland, because they've had such a hot start, can make the playoffs, I think. But Kansas City is legit. I mean, we both picked them, to make some noise this year. I didn't think they'd be as good as they are, but they're a really good team.
And then, Chaku, I'll leave the last one for you. Yankees and Baltimore. Both teams are, within 3 or 4 games. I think Baltimore has kind of owned them this year when they played the head-to-head match. But, you look at power rankings, a lot of power rankings have Yankees as the best team in baseball. So where we see that division in that match.
I mean, they were my 2 World Series winners from our previous show. That was before Garrett Cole got hurt. So the Yankees that they're playing that well with him out is a credit to them. And Soto's been a good fit there, without a doubt. He's made sure he's going to give himself a lot of money somewhere. It's probably biased. I'm still leaning Baltimore. Burns is a legit Cy Young candidate. Henderson is a legit MVP candidate, and a lot of young talent, and I still like their upside more than the Yankees at this point. So I would still give them a slight edge against the Yankees.
Yeah, Meeker, quickly.
Yeah, I just think they're the 2 best teams in the American League. I think that's a fight to the end. I picked the Yankees to go to a World Series, so I'm going to pick them to win the division. But I wouldn't be surprised if it happened the other way. I mean, that was my bet for the ALCS, and that's going to be right to the end.
Same for you, Jason.
Well, right now the Orioles are 35-19. They're plus 190 to win the division. The Yankees are 38-19, minus 195. Now, like Chalky said, they're doing it without Cole, who's coming back soon. That's their 8th. I still think the Orioles are going to win that division. I like their talent, their young talent, and I think they're going to make a move at the deadline. I think they're going to be one of the teams that's going to get a closer. So the Phillies are going to have to probably be battling with them on getting a closer. And if they do, they have the talent to win that division and to maybe win the World Series.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say to you, Jason, around the Yanks are 195 or Baltimore is that weird team when we talked about in the preseason where their win total was like 89.5.
Yeah.
When you're like, why is Vegas not really giving them a high win total? And so far they've proven them wrong. So maybe that's just a team like Vegas, whatever they're
actually right here. They were 89.5.
89.5, right.
Yeah.
So that could just be a team they miss on all year, or it could be a team that ultimately they end up being right. But so far they've proven them wrong. And then lastly, before I move back to you, Jason, for kind of going some of the Braves, we touched on it briefly, but the 2 major injuries, the Acuna and Strider, obviously, and now with Phillies having a 6-game lead. The Braves, do they fight to the end and they're fighting for division, or are they fighting for a wild card, or are they outside looking in?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the exact opposite of last year. I think the Phillies are going to win the division. I think the Braves are still good enough to make the playoffs. And they're another team. They're going to make a trade. They're going to go get a starting pitcher at the deadline. And they're still solid enough to make noise in the playoffs. They're going to be a scary team in the playoffs. So I think the Phillies will win the division, but I think the Braves will get in.
Chalky, how about you?
Same, but I'm probably a lot closer on the Phillies and Braves with the division. I think the Braves are going to get hot, and I think, if the Phillies win the division, I think it comes down to the last week of the season. It's not going to be a 10 or 15 game spread, because the Braves always find a way to make a trade. And whether it was a couple years ago when who was the guy that came in and won the World Series MVP?
Rosario?
Was Rosario, yeah. So, and they get these secondary arms that they get, Sale is back pitching well again, so they can find somebody at a discount and bring them in. I just think they'll be close. Those teams will be close most of the year. So, but I definitely think, they get to the playoffs. They have to be taken seriously, even with Acuna.
The only thing with that is, Sal has proven that he does not stay healthy. So, if he goes down, which is a possibility. I mean, they're really going to start to be thin in the starting position. Meeker, finish us off on the Braves.
You're muted.
You're muted or not?
No.
We may have lost Meeker's connection. If he comes back, we'll let him go. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you. Some of the stuff we talked about off air. You have some picks that maybe you've made or something. We won't go through every award. I'll leave it up to you to say who you think is viable at this point. With the current odd, maybe who you made bets on.
For now, I'll start with the teams. And then, Meeker, if you get your microphone back, just chime in. But, there's we already talked about the Royals. So they were my big bet in the American League with those odds to win the division and then to win the league, AL. Two teams in the National League Central that I think are worth bets. And one I didn't bet because I already bet them preseason to win the division is I think the Cardinals. Meeker said they weren't a good team. I don't know about that. I think they're hitting their stride now. They're 27-27. They're plus 475 to win the division. I think that's worth a bet. Because I'm not crazy about the Brewers. So I think the Cardinals are a legit division bet to win. And then the Pirates now, they have a tough rotation now with those two young kids, Skeens and Joan. And the Pirates are like plus 1,800 to win the division.
Yeah, do you have any fear that the Pirates pull the Pirates and like move somebody, even if they're in sort of a possibility on a playoff?
I mean, they could, but they have a lot of good young talent. Their bullpen's not bad. Now their lineup's not great, but you got Skeens and you got Jones and you got who's the other guy? Chalky, he's on your team. Keller, he's not bad either as a third starter. I mean, they got a legit good staff. So I've seen worse plus 1,800 bets on them. I don't know. I'll talk about awards after if these guys want to give out teams. And have value.
Chalky, reserve, take your end. Meeker will obviously if you come back.
Yeah, I mean, I gave you KC. That would be the big one. I said the Braves are plus 150. I don't think that's a value bet, even though I think they'll be closer to the Phillies than maybe some other people think by the end. So that's really KC would be the one that I would jump on.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Jason, I guess with the Pirates, but I would have to look at the standings. Nobody like one of these, like the Twins, like a team that's like kind of far back can make a push, and I could pull up the standings to kind of go.
I mean, I don't know.
I'm not saying the Twins, but like for instance, and I'll go through. I'll go to AL, and the White Sox, Angels, Oakland, Houston, Toronto, Texas, Detroit.
Yeah, I don't like any of those. If I'm just glancing down here and seeing a team that could get hot, I don't really see anybody in the American League other than KC. And then if we go to the National League.
National, so Miami, Colorado, Mets, Red, Diamondbacks, Nationals, Pittsburgh, Cubs are right there. St. Louis, what you're talking
I think if you're going to get a surprise team, it's going to be one of these teams in the Central. Like it's going to be a Cardinals or Pirates, maybe the Cubs. That are
so still a team that's kind of just on the outside looking in. No, like the teams that are jockeying and to be the worst are going to continue to be worst.
Yeah, I don't see anybody. I don't really see anybody like maybe the Reds, but they have a lot of injuries. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
And how about you, Chalky? Any like kind of?
I mean, I was big on the Reds to get to the playoffs. Obviously, I think they have too much work to do, and they've had a couple injuries, like Jason said. I mean, I'm looking like now. I like Diamondbacks, Rockies. No, I Pirates maybe are valued at 1,800, but I'm not. They're not going to jump both the Cubs and the Brewers, I don't think. And I don't buy.
I mean, to me, your best bets are going to be like the Rangers, who are only 2 under 5, Toronto or Houston.
I mean, I don't think the Twins are a bad choice necessarily to what you're saying. I mean, they're 3 back of a playoff spot now. They're 6 back of the division. If Cleveland slows down and KC takes off and gets the division,
Well,
it's not
Minnesota's in
improbable
the
that
wild card. They're the third wild card.
are they the 3rd wild card right now?
Yeah, they're 30 and 23.
Yeah.
Or 5. Can't read my writing. Something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. So they're in above
I mean, they're 7-3 in their last
West,
10.
right?
So
The West
they're
team, yeah. So, yeah, they have a better record as it is than the Mariners, who are going to get in as a division winner. I Tampa Bay, I don't buy is hanging up there. Detroit, I mean, Scooble's a Cy Young candidate, but I don't know if they have the talent to stay up there. Yeah. I mean, if you want to say Minnesota to win the division, if you don't buy Cleveland, that's 3 plus 3 something, 370. So I could easily say there's value on KC and Minnesota if you're on. I mean, Cleveland, they lost their best pitcher. Bieber went down at the beginning of the season, and so I don't want to say they're doing it with smoke and mirrors because I'm not watching them night in and night out, but I don't know that they have the arms or the bats to go there other than Ramirez to go the whole season.
No, but their issue is they're also going to have to bypass the Royals, not just Cleveland. You know, that's what makes them that plus 3.
What if the young kids start faltering a little bit? Minnesota's been to the playoffs before, so maybe some veterans, and they have a Cy Young candidate who I like with a bet that we'll get to, but.
Yeah, Meeker, it looks like we got you back. I forgot whatever. I don't even remember that other topic, so you'll pick up from here. So, what teams do you see today? So Jason gave out the Royals, the Cardinals, like kind of those middle of the road value teams. So obviously taking the Yankees aren't value right now. So something that has value, you could see making a push, like a legit title win.
KC to win a division is what, 235. So I mean that I like, and I like Houston to bounce back in the second third of the season. So I'm gonna bet them to win the West at 290. But these other teams that you're talking about, I mean, someone's going to surface in that Central, I believe, at some point. The NL Central I'm talking about. I don't know who it is because I heard when I came back that you were even thinking the Pirates could possibly make a move. They have really 3 good frontline starters right now, but their lineup is just trash. You know, they have a couple of young players that are okay, you know, but in the end, you know, I don't know who's going to surface there. But if I'm going to take a flyer on anybody, you know, maybe I take the flyer on the Pirates just because of their staff. I guess that's the best value. Other than that, I don't think there's much value there on the Cubs.
So Jason, so we're coming up on the hour mark. Take us around some of the awards. You know, you could say who you, some like to your own horn on a pick you may have had, but then where do you see it today?
So I'm happy with my Cy Young bets, especially in American League. I gave out Byrne, I gave out Scooble and Reagans. They're all legit Cy Young candidates. They might be top 3 right now in the Cy Young voting in American League. A couple of guys that I have bet recently, and I'll start with the National League MVP. And I don't know if he's still 20-1, but you know, Bone. And he dropped off a little bit, so maybe he's back to 20-1. But Bone was 20-1 on FanDuel the other day, and he was, he was hitting like 3 before he went into the slump. He was at 315. He was like 3rd in the league in RBIs. Thought that was worth a shot. Ozuna had crazy odds, like he was 30-1 to win the MVP, and his stats are ridiculous this year. So I thought two value bets there. Another guy I'll give you out for value for Cy Young is Max Fried at 20-1. Like, he's really turned it on recently. He's like going on this, like, this is about the time last year where Snell really like started to turn it on. And if Fried keeps it up, like, 20-1 is big value there, because the Cy Young in the National League is like way up in the air right now. Like, it's Wheeler and Suarez, Sale. I thought Fried was value. Skeens. He's no longer value to win Rookie of the Year. I have a couple of bets on him at 30-1. He's no longer 30-1. He's like 2-1 now. A couple of bets that I made in the American League. I bet Jose Ramirez. Now you're not finding him now at where I got him at on Monday or Sunday or Monday. I put the bet in. He was 70-1 to win the MVP in the American League. It was either Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. I forget when I put the bet in. He's now 20-1. So, and I bet Salvador Perez at 65-1, and then also Lugo 18-1. I threw a bet on him for Cy Young. And that's all I have. But there's some value still out there. It's still early enough in the season to find value on guys.
Yeah, chalky. And same line of question,
Yeah, so not so much going off of the guys that I picked at the beginning of the year because I think some of them are doing fairly well. But not so much with the National League Cy Young. But Jason went through mentioned 3 of the guys. There's like 5 guys grouped near the top right now in the betting. He mentioned 3 of them. The 2 he didn't mention are Imanaga, and then the guy that I want to give out, which is Glass now, and he's plus 750, so he's the longest shot of that group. But he's up there in wins. He's leading in strikeouts per 9 innings, and the Dodgers are going to be winning games. So, he's easily going to be in contention probably most of the year if he stays healthy.
Yeah, but the Cy Young, wins aren't really a big thing in the Cy Young.
Well, that's what I mean. He's not leading the league in wins, but his ERA is right above 3 a little bit, and he's got the best strikeouts per 9 innings right now. So if he leads the league in strikeouts, that could end up being. Wheeler's the slight favorite right now at 330 as it sits on DraftKings. And then the other bet was going to AL Cy Young. I had Burns as well, and so he's second choice. But a little bit longer shot here. I mentioned him with the Twins. Joe Ryan is 20-1. He's been pitching pretty well, and if the Twins hang around at 20-1, he might get a look. So there's a little more value there than Glass now, you could say. But that's the only other bet I would give out right now.
All right, and then Meeker?
Yeah, I'm glad that I bet Skeens for Rookie of the Year when his odds were 20-1 at the time, and Glass now was, let's see, he was 14-1 when I bet him for the season. I still think Glass now's got some value at 750 right now, what I'm seeing on DraftKings. I like your Lugo pick, Jason, for Cy Young in the American League at 16. You said you got 18, so
gotta shop around.
Check that out. Yep, and Ramirez also for MVP in the American League at 20-1. The long shot, I don't think this is going to happen because I think Mookie Betts is going to win the MVP. But if De La Cruz steals 100 bases and hits 30 home runs and Cincinnati somehow gets into this race, it's hard to overlook 100 steals and 30 home runs, even if he does strike out 170 times. And right now he's 20-1 to win the NL MVP.
I gave him out.
And even though
hold on, I gotta stop you there. I gave him out beginning of the year at 120-1. I bet him. So, yeah,
that's a good. And the only other thing I would say is that there's 2 pitchers, obviously, that are leading the NL Rookie of the Year race, but Jackson Merrill is probably the best hitter in this race, and he's 12-1 currently. So if some of these pitchers, because of load management, decide to shut him down at some point in the season or they get injured, he's probably your best bet for an offensive player to win Rookie.
That's a good point, because I jumped on Skeens when Jason pointed out to me that he was still available like 30-1. But if Pittsburgh's out of the race in September, I can't see them pitching him through the end of the year since he just got up. So that could be a negative, whereas like the Cubs might be in the race the whole year. And Imanaga is what? Is he 30-something, or he's been pitching professionally in Japan for a long time?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's just about, anything else to add on the show? We have pretty much covered everything we wanted for the first third of the MLB season. Like I said, next week we'll be doing the Belmont Stakes. Wednesday is probably when we're looking, so look for that on Wednesday night into Thursday. And then the following week is the U.S. Open. Always fun with our golf shows. So next 2 shows should be a little bit outside the box, where we're not covering the 4 major sports. So keep an eye out. This was episode 109.
Don't forget our sponsor. Our sponsor.
Our spot. Jason, do you have this sponsor? I don't have it.
Giovannina's Pizza.
You tried the rest. Now try the best.
Try the best.
Broad Street Hustle, episode 109. Have a great night.